Assalamu alaikum. So today we're going to start discussing a new type of text, which you might need to translate. Like, I think you would receive a lot of job offers where you have to translate an abstract, ملخص الدراسة, or you have to, let's say, translate it for yourself. If you're like, when it is your own abstract, like when I did my abstract for the MA thesis, I kind of did it in Arabic and then I did it in English without translating them. So that's probably better if you're doing your own abstract. But usually if you're translating someone else's abstract, you're going to need to identify the steps and the way to handle such text. The good thing about abstracts is that they are part of scientific research, okay? Scientific research needs to be written in an academic way. Good. And you're going to need to use like the most standard language of like, or variety of either English or Arabic. Why? Because this is a scientific research, and by scientific, it doesn't necessarily have to be chemistry or physics. Scientific research can be in humanitarian studies, can be in philosophy, can be in politics, can be in history. So when we say scientific research, we're basically talking about any kind of research that's been done scientifically. Not necessarily the topic itself is science, as in biology, chemistry, physics, and so on, natural sciences. So we have human sciences and we have natural sciences, but both are considered scientific research. Now, for those who don't know what a research is and what a research consists of, let's have that together. Karabajaya? Okay, that's going to be recorded, but it's fine. Now, in any research, we have, first of all, the title of the research, and then we have like, okay, then we have the table of contents, and then we have a list of abbreviations that are going to be used in the research. And then here, the table of contents also includes like the table of figures, if you have any figures or charts or whatever. And then we have the abstract. And then after the abstract, we have, what do we have? We have the first chapter. And in the first chapter, we usually get an introduction about the research and the question of the research and like an overview of the research. And then we have limitations. These are all in the first, let's say, chapter. And then in the second chapter, we have literature review and previous studies. And then we have in the third chapter, the methodology. And then in the fourth chapter, we have the data analysis and discussion of results and conclusions. And then we have the references. Sometimes this chapter is divided into two. We have data analysis in one chapter and discussion of results in another chapter. But this is generally how a research looks like, with some changes, if like depending on the type of research that we're conducting. Now, why do we focus on the translation of abstracts? Because, for example, at the university, at the Islamic University, you have to, if you're writing your research in Arabic, you have to submit an English translation of the abstract only. And if you are submitting your research in English, you need to include the Arabic abstract too. Now, the abstract I shared with you includes certain words or terms that are important. And these terms, like, they're repeated in research or in abstracts in general, especially the ones, let me share the screen with you. So especially things like المنهج الوصفي التحليلي، دلالة إحصائية للمتغيرات المستقلة. Again, دلالة. Okay, the other words that are underlined, they are underlined not because they are, let's say, common in abstracts, but because they are the essence of this one. Like, they make the topic of this research. We're going to look at how we handle similar texts and understand how this is different from news translation and how this is different from headlines translation, for example, or even humanitarian stories or literary stories. The main difference, the very main difference, is that number one, you need to use the information in the same order as they are. So here the information is presented in a certain way, in a certain scientific way, that you do not have the freedom to rearrange the way you want. So stick or adhere to the arrangement of information. Number two, you need to be very specific. No need for additions. No need for omissions. And let me explain this part. Usually, there is a limited number of words given to the researcher when they write an abstract. And it depends on the institution to which they're submitting their work. But I would roughly say that the range goes from maybe 200 to 250 words, and sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. So you might find some institutions accepting 150 word and plus, or 350 minus. 150 plus means that they get to the word limit can be from 150 up to 350, and that would like be the range basically. So when you translate and you keep adding unnecessary additions, you keep making unnecessary additions because you want to beautify the language, because you want to further clarify the sentences and so on, then you're going to be facing a problem. What if I exceed the limit that this person is given? Sometimes the client would return the piece and ask you to reduce the number of words. And that happened so many times. Like, you crossed the limit and they decided that no, we need it to be, for example, 200 instead of 250. So you have to keep in mind that when you translate academic texts, you need to stick to the word limit that you're given. That's one. And you need to stick to the arrangement of information. Why? Because scientific research is the same whether it is in English or in Arabic. And by that we mean how we order the required information in Arabic is the same as in English, because it is the same template. Like, research is written the same way across languages. And you would notice that there are, let's say, different styles of writing. You would come across APA, MLA, Oxford. So these different, you should be aware of these different styles, especially the APA, because that's the one that's usually used, commonly used in the Islamic university. And inshallah, when you take research methodology or methods at the university, you would learn how to do in-text citation and referencing and how to actually write the abstract and so on. Familiarizing yourself with how it is written is going to help you in the translation. So it is important that you learn how an abstract is written in order to be able to translate it in the source, from the source text or source language to the target language. And this reminds us of what we learned when we discussed the translation of headlines. We first learned how to write a headline, and then we started translating the headlines. Again, the easy part about abstracts is that you don't need to rearrange the information because the information is already arranged in accordance with a certain style template, usually the APA style. So it's APA in case you want to look it up. Okay. Now, you need to be very specific. You also need to be accurate. You need to be accurate because if you, like, sometimes if you slip in translating a word or two, people might not notice. But if it is a scientific research, every word has been added to give certain value to the research. It indicates something. So if you're not accurate in your translation and you make mistakes, say in grammar or in semantics, then that's going to affect the value of the research and then affect your reputation as a translator because you messed something up, and messing a research up is quite bad for your reputation. So you should keep that in mind. Are we clear so far? Do you have any questions? I haven't started the actual juicy stuff, but do you have any questions so far? Are we going good? Are we going good? Okay, cool. Now, you need to be, let's say, very formal. Avoid, let's say, like, I don't want to say phrasal verbs, but I want to say avoid using informal language. Avoid informal words. Try to use the kind of words like that. Let's say, I'm trying to think of a way to tell you this, but basically you should just be formal. Sometimes there are two choices. One is common, one is less common. I don't want you to use the less common, but at the same time, the language of the research, although should be clear, it should be understood, nothing mysterious, but the level of language should be higher than the level of language in an article, for example, because it's a research. That's what I want you to understand. Research is the highest level of written pieces because it adds not only value, but it's going to be a reference to other researchers. And the results are going to be impacting other researches. So your language as a researcher should not be the same as your language as a news reporter or as a story writer or as a columnist, for example. So you need to be formal. The language and the structure and the lexicon should all be formal, basically. Okay. So if you have two options, remember when we translated news, we did the opposite. like instead of saying confrontations, we used to say clashes. No, in research, you should use confrontations instead of clashes. You should sound, let's say, more eloquent. Okay, makes sense? Okay. Now, هدفت هذه الدراسة إلى اختبار أثر حوكمة الشركات على هيكل رأس المال للشركات المدرجة في بورصة فلسطين. واعتمد الباحث المنهج الوصفي التحليلي في تحليل البيانات المالية للشركات so on so forth. Now, the most important thing that you should know is that most abstracts begin with this research or study aims or aimed at. Now, I'm giving you options, but when you translate, don't give me options. This is important. Again, I give you options because I'm teaching you. But if you're translating, don't do this. You should choose one word and stick to it, okay? So again, if you're going to use the word research, you should stick to the word research. Now, if you're translating, for example, for a master's thesis, it should be this thesis, okay? If it is a PhD dissertation, this dissertation. So this is for the MA. This is for the PhD. And this one, let's say, this is neutral. You can use it for both master's and PhD. And this one is somewhat neutral, but it's usually used with shorter researches, like the ones that are presented in conferences, okay? It's usually a study. There is also the word paper, this paper, and again, shorter researches, like the ones submitted to conferences or journals. So the difference between aims to and aims at. So the research aims to address. The research aims at addressing. So you should know if you're going to choose, or if you're going to use aim to, you should use infinitive. Aim at, it should be followed by a gerund. Okay. Now, does anyone have, or did anyone prepare? Did anyone prepare the translation of the first part? Did anyone prepare? No one? محدش حضر؟ Okay, we have someone. Mariam, this study aimed to test the impact of corporate governance on the capital structure of companies listed on the Palestine exchange. Okay. The researcher adopted the descriptive analytical approach in analyzing the financial statements of non-financial and authorized companies during the period 2011 to 2014. This is excellent. This is really good. Very, very small comments, but this is really good. So you notice that she used the word aim, study. And then aim to test the impact of corporate governance, okay, on the capital structure of companies listed on the Palestine. Something is missing here. The researcher adopted the descriptive analytical approach. Descriptive analytical approach is correct in analyzing the financial statements of the of non-financial and authorized companies during the period 2011 to 2014. This is excellent. This is really good. So you're probably just missing Palestine Stock Exchange. Hold on. You can't see my screen, right? Can you see my screen?
No.
Okay. Okay. So again, here you just need to say Palestinian Stock Exchange. And the researcher adopted is correct. Descriptive analytical, or it's the analytical descriptive approach in analyzing the financial, it's not statements, it's data, okay? Of non-financial and authorized companies, perfect. During the period, okay. تمام. Basically no more comments. Yes, واستخدم الباحث أساليب الإحصاء الوصفي وتحليل الانحدار. حد كمل؟ هتلاحظوا هنا it's literal translation all the way. ما فيش لف ودوران.
أنا كملت أبعد كمان مرة.
So it's basically literal translation. No need for, let's say, beautifying the language. No need to go around the structure. Okay, the researcher used descriptive statistics methods and multiple regression analysis of cross-sectional time series data. Study used a random effects model from multiple. Okay, so basically شايفة هذه تمام؟ هذا هو هذا. فمش مضطرة تحكي، يعني خليني أحط لكم الجملة عشان تشوفوها. يعني أنت مثلا عاملة هيك صح؟ ليش هذا مش صح الحركة؟ لأنه هو هذا بالعربي حط لي إياه بالإنجليزي عشان هذا هو المسمى تبعه. فأنا بالإنجليزي خلص بستخدم المسمى من غير ما أحطه بين قوسين. The study used the random.
أنا كنت محتارة أحطها هيك زي ما هي ولا أضيف الموديل أو إيش زي هيك.
هيك بتطلع. تمام يا جماعة. هذه أي حاجة يكون فيها لغة. أظن في حد سأل المرة اللي فاتت. أظن إيمان سألت المرة اللي فاتت لما يكون في إنجليزي مع عربي. خلص هو حطت لي إياه عشان الشخص اللي دارس عارف إنه هذا المقصود. تمام. بالإنجليزي لما أجي بدي أكتبه حستخدم خلص المصطلح الأساسي. تمام. نشوف
صحيح. في بنت صح يا مس، في بنت سألت كيف بنترجم لما يكون في مصطلح بالإنجليزي أو بالعربي.
تمام. So the researcher هنا الفرق في شغلة بس هي إيش كاتبة خلاص تمام. The researcher applied descriptive statistics and multiple regression analysis of the transit time series data. Same thing, ممتاز. The study followed the random effect model of multiple analysis after conducting the necessary tests using اللي هو if use program to obtain the study results. ما فيش اختلاف كتير مع اللي هي كاتبة، بس بنفعش نقول to access. يعني هحط لكم اللي هي كاتباها، هتشوفوا مثلا هنا بنفعش نقول to access the results of the study. ليش؟ لأنه الريزلتس أنا بدي أوصل لها، بمعنى بدي أتوصل لها، مش هي موجودة في مكان فأنا بدي أدخل عليها. access بمعنى دخول على الشغلة، لكن أنا لما أشتغل على يعني بدي أوصل لنتائج في دراسة، تمام؟ يعني مش النتائج موجودة فأنا بوصل لها، لا أنا بتوصل لها من خلال الاناليسيس، من خلال البحث، من خلال تمام؟ واضح؟ usually you obtain results أو you get results. تمام؟ مرة تانية، الشغل هنا ما فيش فيه لف ودوران، مباشرة. researcher did, obtained, found, analyzed data and then he got results. بمعنى اللغة مباشرة، اللغة ما فيش فيها metaphors، فيش similes، فيش anything that is literary. There's no need to rearrange information. You need to be as literal as possible. And by literal, we don't mean you need to stick to the same language, grammar or language structure of the source text, but you need to stick to the same words and expressions in the source text. Okay, here let's just you need to also remember that you should follow one tense. If you're going to start with present simple, continue using present simple unless meaning requires a different tense. And if you're going to use past tense, continue using past tense unless like the meaning requires the use of a different tense. And what do we mean when we say that? You can write the abstract using the present tense, as in a fact, like the study examines 1, 2, 3, does 1, 2, 3, analyzes 1, 2, 3, but the researcher found these results. تمام؟ لأنه خلص يعني ماشي أنا بحكي عن الدراسة this is what happened, so it's somewhat a fact. بس لما وصلنا لأنه the researcher did، عمل، سوى، بنقولش the researcher finds so and so، أو the result the study مثلا finds the following results. So it's usually he found the following results. But the results show a statistically significant negative impact of the independent variables. بهمني جدا تعرفوا هذا المصطلح اللي هو ذو دلالة إحصائية، statistically significant, could be negative and could be positive. So this word can change into positive if it says أثراً إيجابياً. Then like here, where's the other part? A statistically significant positive impact. So here it was positive. So this is the one word that changes whether it is negative or positive, but ذو دلالة إحصائية, it's statistically significant. And then we have variables, المتغيرات, dependent and independent. المستقل independent. تمام؟ التابع، المتغير التابع dependent. مش موجود هنا متغير تابع، بس لازم تعرفوها. المتغير التابع اللي هو dependent، يعني يتبع للمتغير المستقل. عارفين إيش يعني متغير تابع ومتغير مستقل؟ عندكم معلومات ولا لا؟ ولا أشرحه على السريع؟
No, we don't know.
Yes,
No.
it's something
اشرحي يا
like
ميس.
okay اشرحي خلاص.
طيب تمام، ضايل دقيقة فأنا حطفي وأبعت لكم ونشرحه على الرابط الجديد.